It's here! The brand spanking new 4th generation Toyota Prius is upon us, and the latest version of the most famous hybrid car in the world has been redesigned from the wheels up. When it first appeared in Japan in 1997, the Prius naturally made waves by being the first mass-produced hybrid car that you could buy. And since then, Toyota has sold a staggering 3.6 million Prius cars around the world. But the problem is, the Prius isn't the only hybrid car in the village anymore, so in the face of mounting competition, there's a lot of pressure on Toyota to stay ahead of the game. So what's the plan? Well, firstly, there's the looks. At first glance, it's plain to see this is the most striking Prius yet. Inevitably, this mixture of sharp lines and smooth curves is divisive. Some will love it, others won't. But regardless of what you think, this is undeniably a car that makes a bold visual statement. Then there's the inside. It definitely feels a bit space age in here thanks to touches like the dashboard that wraps around both driver and front passenger. There isn't a typical instrument cluster either. Instead, a long strip shows a massive amount of information from basic engine lights to your speed, cruise control settings and what safety systems are on. Plus, of course, there's the usual infotainment and sat-nav system. There's also loads of nifty tech in here that adds to the car's space age feel. Even the entry-level Prius comes with features like smart entry, adaptive cruise control, lane departure assist, road sign assist, and automatic high beam. But then as you ascend through the trims, you get extras such as a colour heads-up display, wireless charging, and the new automatic parking system. And if that is not bold enough, Toyota is making a lot of promises about this new car. This new Prius should be more efficient than ever, spacious, quiet, and even exciting to drive. But can it really be all things to all people? Need something spacious and practical? Let's pretend I'm a family man, or perhaps a well-known brand of taxi driver. So here I am in what is arguably the Prius's natural habitat, a big crowded city. Well, firstly, the driver position has changed from the last Prius, and I quite like it. It feels like quite a natural position to drive in. Visibility to the front has been improved, or they say it's been improved, and I think offers a decent command of the view ahead of me. We did criticise the last Prius on having quite restricted visibility to the rear of the car, and looking at it with the big black bar that intersects halfway across the window, it feels again cluttered despite the larger windows. As to the actual driving around town, this is a great car. It's not noisy, it accelerates very well, it certainly doesn't struggle. I mean, this car isn't what you'd call nimble, but it doesn't have to be. It's easy to drive, fairly quiet, and reasonably responsive. Of course, the big challenge with the city is finding a parking space that you can get into, and that's where the new Prius's party trick comes into play. Its self-parking system. SIPA, or Simple Intelligent Park Assist, is Toyota's new self-parking system. Push a button and the car starts looking for either parallel or perpendicular spaces. When it finds one, the car will steer itself into the space. You just need to work the pedals. It can be quite weird if you've never used self-parking before, and while we only got to test the parallel parking on the launch, we were quite impressed at how well it slotted itself in behind another car. Space in the rear is what I'd call reasonable. I'm 6 foot tall, the driver's seat is set up for me, and now that I've clambered into the back, you can see I've got plenty of knee room. It's a little bit restricted on the foot room, and my hair is skimming the top of the ceiling, but it's not too bad. I think I'd be comfortable on long journeys as one of the 2 main passengers, but if I was sat in the middle, well, it's quite narrow and I wouldn't want to do any long journeys sat here. The battery in this new Prius lives under the rear seats, not in the boot like the last generation. And that's important because it's created an additional 50 litres of space, taking the claimed capacity of the boot to just over 500 litres without a spare wheel. Practicality is nice, but I also want something engaging to drive. Which means it's time to put into the all-new power mode. This Toyota Prius is the first one to be built on the company's new TGNA platform. And what that really means is that this Prius is lower down to the ground than the last one, which should sharpen up handling and reduce body roll without sacrificing that all-important comfort. So does it all work? Well, I'd say yes. The lower stance of the car does make it feel quite solid through the corners. I mean, there is some body roll, granted, but not really that much of it, so it feels quite nice to drive. Now, response-wise, when driving along in eco or normal mode, I must admit I didn't really feel frustrated in any way for the type or the size of the car that I'm driving. However, when you do put it into power mode like I've got at the moment, it does firm up the response and it does make it a bit more of an exciting car to drive. Now, it may not be as emotive or anywhere near as emotive as a lukewarm hatch, but it's a lovely surprise for a Prius.
Finally, what about the road tripper who spends a lot of time in the car?
So, as someone who does a lot of miles, I'm going to need something that feels comfortable on the motorway. And the first part of that is the noise at high speeds. And as you can tell, there's not an awful lot of noise. I mean, yes, you might be able to hear some wind noise, but it's an incredibly blustery day here in Spain. And then there's the tech. Every Prius, regardless of what trim you buy with, has adaptive cruise control on it. Now, adaptive cruise control doesn't mean you just pick a speed. It means you pick a speed, but if someone ahead of you is going slower, it will automatically slow the car to match the speed so you don't crash into the back of them. Once you clear that person or you pull over into another lane, the car will automatically speed you back up to the speed that you want it to go. And it's fantastic. It works, it's responsive, and I can set the distance of as to how far I want to sit behind the car in front of me quite quickly and easily on the steering wheel. And then there's the colour head-up display. This doesn't come as standard across the entire range, it's only on some of the upper trims, but I do recommend it because it's clear, it's easy to see, and even with my polarised sunglasses on, I can actually still see it, which is a bit of a surprise if I'm honest. Of course, what really will make this a car that's worthy of doing long distances or not is the fuel economy. Now, on the previous Prius, we actually found it didn't actually get that good MPG on the motorway. In fact, it was less than 50, which meant some regular combustion cars were getting better mileage than the last Prius. Now, Toyota say this car should do, I think, 15% better compared to the last one in terms of motorway driving. And the top claimed MPG is 94.1, which would be fantastic if this car could get anywhere near that in our realistic lab tests. But we're not really going to know that until we get this car into the lab to find out just what fuel economy it can really achieve.
Prices for the entry-level active trim start at just over $23,000, which may sound expensive, but for a large-sized hybrid, which comes with a lot of impressive tech as standard, that price suddenly becomes more justifiable, if not reasonable. But if you want some of the extra features like the parking assist, heads-up colour display, that price will naturally rise. The Prius Business Edition Plus has most of the goodies on and costs $26,000, which is a substantial investment, even for a car with no road tax.
So let's review. It's a great city car, and yet it feels at home on faster country roads and on the motorway. Inside, it's spacious, it's comfortable, and yes, there are a few little quirks like the restricted rear visibility, the slightly noisy CVT gearbox when you're on the motorway, and let's face it, you're going to have to love the looks in order to buy it, but overall, I think this is a great car. Of course, until we get it into the lab, we're not going to know the MPG figure, which is so important to hybrid cars like the Prius. And that's also where we're going to find out if this Prius has what it takes to be a best buy.
Click on the links below to take out a £1 trial and get instant access to all our reviews, find out which are the best large cars we've tested, or watch our review on the previous generation Toyota Prius.